Welcome to this deep dive just for you. Today, we are taking a look at Darwin's On the Origin of Species.
One of those influential books ever.
Absolutely. And we're going to do a deep dive into
Yeah.
his theory of evolution by natural selection.
It's a big one.
It is a big one. So we're going to try to, uncover the core arguments and explore some interesting examples
I think we can do it.
and have some fun along the way.
Yeah, for sure.
Spark some aha moments.
It's amazing to think that, Darwin's just looking at the world and just gathering data
Yeah.
for years led to this, profound theory that just changed how we understand life.
So, okay, Darwin's journey on the HMS Beagle, that was like a turning point for him.
It was.
Right? Was it like the finches and the Galapagos that made him think, oh, evolution?
I mean, the Galapagos were really important, but he was already thinking about these ideas when he was in South America.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was fascinated by like the different species he saw in different environments.
Mm-hmm.
And that got him thinking about how those variations came to be.
So the Galapagos weren't like his big aha moment.
Right. They were more like a confirmation.
Confirmation.
Yeah, like, oh, this is what I was thinking about, but I can see it in action.
We hear.
Right here.
Yeah.
Like he noticed that species on each island, like those mockingbirds,
Right.
were similar to the mainland species, but they had these unique adaptations for the island environment.
Like each island was its own little
Yeah, like a testing ground.
experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so speaking of variations,
Yeah.
Darwin was super into what breeders were doing with like domesticated animals, right?
Yes, especially pigeon breeders.
Those are pigeons.
He loved pigeons.
Why pigeons?
I don't know why pigeons specifically, but I think it was because they were so accessible and people were already doing all this breeding.
Hmm.
He was blown away by how they could select for certain traits,
Yeah.
like the fancy tail feathers, and just completely change the look of the pigeon in a few generations.
So these pigeon people were accidentally demonstrating evolution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a perfect analogy.
For natural selection, because nature's doing the same thing.
So nature's like the breeder.
Exactly. It's selecting for traits that give organisms an advantage. But in the wild, it's not about tail feathers. It's about survival and reproduction.
It's about making more pigeons.
Well, it's about making more of whatever organism is best suited to that environment.
Right. Yeah. So like a beak that's perfect for cracking a certain seed.
Exactly. Or camouflage that helps an insect blend in.
Right. It's all about fitting in or not being seen, I guess.
Right. Fitting into your surroundings.
So Darwin didn't just look at domesticated species. He saw variation everywhere, right?
Everywhere. It's
Yeah.
in every species. You just have to look closely.
So what's the difference between like a variation and a new species?
That's a good question. And sometimes it's hard to tell.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, sometimes it's like, is this a variation or is this the start of something new?
A blurry line.
Totally a blurry line.
Huh.
And he noticed that species in larger groups, like families of organisms,
Right.
they were more likely to have variations. Yeah, like they were actively making new species.
He called it species manufacturing.
Yeah, isn't that a cool term?
It's a cool term.
It's like there's a factory somewhere just pumping out new species.
Yeah, it sounds so deliberate, like someone's deciding what to make.
Right, but that's where the struggle for existence comes in.
Right. Yeah. That doesn't sound very fun.
No, not really, but it's the reality of nature.
So what is it? The struggle for existence.
It's basically competition
For what?
for everything.
Yeah.
Food, water, shelter, mates.
Mates.
Yeah, everybody wants to make babies,
Right.
so they need to find a mate.
I see.
And Darwin had some pretty vivid examples of this struggle.
Like what?
Well, he talks about how Scotch fir trees and cattle and insects are all connected. Like if you change one population, it affects the others.
Okay.
And then there's this example with a cat.
A cat.
Yeah, a cat hunting mice.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So the cat eats the mice, and that affects the bees because the mice eat the bee nests.
So less mice means more bees.
Right. And the bees pollinate flowers. So the cat indirectly affects which flowers thrive.
Wow, that's
It's all connected.
crazy.
It is crazy.
So we've got variations and we've got this struggle for existence.
Right.
But how does that lead to new species?
Well, that's where natural selection comes in.
Okay, so explain it like I'm 5.
Okay, imagine a bunch of gazelles.
Okay, I like gazelles.
And some of them are a little bit faster than the others.
Okay.
Now a cheetah comes along.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and the cheetah's going to catch the slower gazelles.
So sad.
But the faster ones escape,
Co-gazelles.
right? And those faster gazelles, they live to have babies. And guess what? Their babies are also likely to be fast.
So the slow gazelles are out of luck?
Basically, Yeah, over time, the slower ones get weeded out,
Yeah.
and you end up with a population of mostly fast gazelles.
And then eventually, maybe they're so different from the original gazelles that they're a new species.
Exactly.
That is natural
It's
selection.
it in the nutshell.
And it can change anything.
Pretty much, yeah. Any trait that gives an organism an edge can be selected for.
But it's not just about surviving, right? There's also sexual selection.
Ah, yes, sexual selection.
That's where those fancy traits come in, right? Like the peacock feathers.
Exactly. It's all about attracting mates.
But some of those traits seem like they would make an animal more likely to get eaten.
That's true.
So how does that work?
Well, it's about finding a balance,
Between.
surviving and reproducing.
Okay.
If a flashy trait helps you attract more mates and have more offspring.
Even if it makes you a little more vulnerable.
Exactly. Then it can still be favored by sexual selection.
Wow, nature is complicated.
It is, but that's what makes it so fascinating.
It's like nature has its own sense of style.
Yeah, some species are all about blending in and being sneaky,
Right?
and others are like, look at me, I'm fabulous.
Uh-huh.
Even Darwin was puzzled by some of those really elaborate traits.
Like what?
He mentioned the turkey cock's breast tuft.
I don't even know what that is.
It's like this weird little tuft of feathers, and no one really knows what it's for.
Maybe it's just for looking good.
Maybe.
So we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
From the beagle to species manufacturing to natural selection and sexual selection.
And we're just getting started.
Oh, there's more.
Oh yeah, we still need to talk about the challenges to Darwin's theory.
Oh, yeah, like the fossil record.
Exactly, and how his ideas changed the way we classify life.
You can't wait.
Me neither. This is fun.
Yeah, this is way more than just a summary. It's like, I'm finally understanding why evolution matters.
That's what we're going for.
I love it.
All right, let's dive into those challenges next.
Okay. Last time we were talking about natural and sexual selection working together.
Right, like two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, exactly. And it's amazing how that competition has led to such incredible diversity.
Totally. But it's not just competition between individuals.
What do you mean?
Well, Darwin also talked about how geography plays a role in evolution.
Oh, yeah, like how different environments can shape different species.
Exactly. And he used some really interesting examples to illustrate this.
Okay, like what?
Well, he compared the animals on the east and west coasts of the Americas,
Okay.
which are separated by that narrow isthmus of Panama.
Right.
And he found that those groups of animals were very different.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah. But then he contrasted that with the Pacific Islands,
Okay.
where the species change more gradually from island to island.
So it's like the geography is creating barriers.
Exactly. Those barriers can isolate populations,
Right.
and then those isolated populations start to evolve along their own paths.
So it's like a giant game of biogeography.
Exactly. Species are constantly moving and adapting.
And sometimes they get stuck.
And sometimes they get stuck, and that can lead to new species.
That's so cool. Okay, so Darwin also talked about those rudimentary organs.
Oh, yeah. Those are fascinating.
They're like leftovers from evolution.
Exactly. They're remnants of structures that were functional in ancestors.
But why would an organism keep those useless parts? Wouldn't they just disappear?
Well, evolution doesn't always work that way.
What do you mean?
It's not like there's a cleanup crew that comes in and removes everything that's not being used.
Okay,
Sometimes those structures just get reduced or modified.
but they're still there.
They're still there, like a whisper from the past.
I'd like that. A whisper from the past, so give me an example.
Okay, well, flightless birds like ostriches.
They have wings, but they can't fly.
Right. But those wings are rudimentary organs.
So they used to be able to fly.
Their ancestors did, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's
Yeah.
not just wings, right?
No, there are lots of examples.
What about humans? Do we have any rudimentary organs?
We do, actually.
Really, like what?
Well, our appendix is a good example.
Oh, yeah, that thing that gets infected.
Yeah, it's thought to be a remnant of a larger cecum.
A what?
A cecum. It's part of the digestive system.
Okay.
In our herbivorous ancestors, it was much larger and helped them digest plant material.
But we don't need it anymore.
Not really, no, but it's still hanging around.
That's so weird. It's like our bodies are carrying around these echoes of the past.
It is kind of weird when you think about it.
And Darwin connected this to embryology, too.
He noticed that embryos often show traces of structures that are absent in the adult form.
So like a baby in the womb might have something that disappears before it's born.
Exactly. He gave the example of teeth in unborn calves.
They have teeth, but they never use them.
Nope, they get reabsorbed before the calf is born.
Why would they even have teeth in the first place?
Well, it's thought to be a leftover from their browsing ancestors,
Who needed teeth to chew plants?
right?
It's like every organism is carrying a little history book inside of it.
I love that analogy. It's so true.
Okay, so We've talked about rudimentary organs and embryology, but what about those challenges to Darwin's theory?
Right, like the fossil record.
Yeah, people were saying that it didn't show the gradual transitions that Darwin predicted.
That was a big criticism, yeah.
So how did Darwin respond to that?
Well, he argued that we shouldn't expect the fossil record to be perfect. Fossilization is a rare event.
Right, most things just decay when they die.
Exactly. So the fossil record is more like a series of snapshots than a complete film.
Okay, I see. So we're only getting glimpses of the story.
That's right. And Darwin knew that the fossil record of his time was very limited.
But he still thought it supported his theory.
He pointed out that fossils in older layers of rock were generally simpler
Okay,
than those found in younger layers.
so that suggests a progression,
Right, a gradual increase in complexity over time.
even if we don't have all the pieces.
Exactly. And he also used specific examples like the evolution of horses.
Oh, yeah, those early horses with multiple toes.
Exactly. Those fossils show a clear lineage, even with gaps.
So the fossil record is like a puzzle that we're still putting together.
That's a great way to think about it.
And new fossils are being found all the time.
They are. It's exciting to see how they add to our understanding of the past.
So Darwin didn't just rely on the fossil record. He also looked at those patterns of variation and distribution.
Right. And embryology, too. He was a master at synthesizing information from different fields.
He was a true scientist.
He was. And he wasn't just trying to explain how species change.
What else was he trying to do?
He was also trying to change the way we classify life.
Okay, so instead of just grouping organisms based on how they look,
Right. He argued that we should consider their evolutionary history.
so like who they're related to.
Exactly. It's about seeing life through a genealogical lens.
It's like building a family tree for all living things.
That's a great analogy.
And it helps us make sense of all the diversity.
Absolutely, because it shows how everything is connected.
We're all part of one big family.
We are, and that's a profound insight.
It is. It's both humbling and awe-inspiring.
It really is.
So Darwin's theory wasn't without its controversies
Of course not. It challenged some very deeply held beliefs.
about the origin of life and our place in the world,
Exactly. And those debates continue to this day.
which is a good thing, right?
Absolutely. It
Mhm.
means that we're still grappling with these big questions.
And that science is still evolving.
Exactly. Science is a process, not a destination.
I love that. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive,
We have from Darwin's journey to his struggles and triumphs.
and we've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to explore.
But I think we've laid a good foundation.
I agree, and I hope our listeners are feeling inspired to learn more.
I hope so too. Okay, so last time we were talking about how Darwin's theory kind of like changed how we classify life.
Yeah, it's not just about what things look like anymore. It's about like their family history.
It's like that shift from just grouping things by appearance to understanding their evolutionary relationships.
Right. It's like instead of a museum exhibit, it's a family tree.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, showing those connections through shared ancestors.
It really highlights the fact that we humans are like just this one tiny branch on this massive tree of life.
Exactly, and that's something that Darwin's work really brings to light.
Yeah, it's both humbling and inspiring.
It really is.
But you know, Darwin's work wasn't perfect.
Of course, no scientific theory is perfect.
Right. He even admitted there were some difficulties with his theory.
Yeah, like those gaps in the fossil record.
Right. Those were a big deal for his critics.
They were, because they argued that it didn't support the idea of gradual change over time.
So how did Darwin respond to that?
Well, he basically said, look, fossilization is a super rare event.
Right. Most things just decay when they die.
Exactly. So the fossil record is inherently incomplete.
So we're missing a lot of information.
We are. It's like trying to understand a whole novel from just a few pages.
Okay, so we're only getting glimpses of the story.
Exactly. And Darwin knew that the fossil record of his time was even more limited than what we have today.
But he still thought it supported his theory.
He did. He pointed out that the fossils found in older rock layers were generally simpler
Okay.
than those found in younger layers.
So that suggests a progression of sorts,
Exactly. A gradual increase in complexity over time.
even if we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle.
All right. And he also used specific examples to illustrate this, like the evolution of horses.
Oh, yeah, those early horses with their multiple toes.
Exactly. Those fossils show a clear lineage over millions of years, even with some gaps.
It's amazing how much we can learn from fossils.
It really is. It's like looking back in time.
So Darwin didn't just rely on fossils, he also looked at variation and distribution patterns.
Right, and he even brought in evidence from embryology.
He was really good at pulling together information from different
He
fields.
was a true interdisciplinary thinker,
And it all pointed to the same conclusion.
that evolution by natural selection is the driving force behind the diversity of life.
But I know his theory wasn't exactly met with open arms.
No, it was revolutionary, and it challenged some deeply held beliefs.
About our place in the world and how we got here.
And those debates haven't really gone away.
Which is actually a good thing in a way.
It is. It means we're still engaged with these big questions.
And that science is always evolving.
Exactly, which is how it should be.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into On the Origin of Species, what's the one thing you hope our listeners take away from it?
Well, I hope they gain a deeper appreciation for the power of Darwin's theory.
Yeah, it's really amazing how he was able to put it all together.
It's a story of change, adaptation, and interconnectedness.
It's a story that's still unfolding today.
It is, and it's a story that we're all a part of.
And as Darwin himself said, there is grandeur in this view of life.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, that's all the time we have for today, but we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Darwin's groundbreaking work.
And we encourage you to keep exploring these ideas on your own.
Until next time.